Alrighty, so Josue should be joining us here as well in a second. But just as folks start rolling in, wanted to thank everyone for attending today. We've got a great chat ahead, inclusive future for modern digital storytelling. We've got some creators here from our recent Restock initiative. So I'm joined right now with Sonya Ballantyne along with Carol Murphy. And one second here, we're going to be talking through some recommendations for businesses and creators to build a more inclusive content strategy. So, over the past year and a half, we've been working in lockstep with these creators to build a more inclusive stock media and content library. So, the initiative is called Restock that we've been working with these creators on. And you can learn more by visiting storyblocks.com/restock. So, collectively, everyone on this panel has been working to co-create several collections that are exclusively available through storyblocks.com. And, they're designed to increase the footage that appears on Storyblocks and within the media landscape of First Native and Indigenous everyday activities. So, I want to make sure that when we're getting started here, we can really just take the opportunity to get to know the folks on our live and learn more about how they work with Storyblocks, the way they've been able to collaborate and contribute. So yeah, maybe, as we get started here, let's talk about Restock and let's talk about the partnership. So Sonya, if you want to kick us off, if you could introduce yourself and talk about your work with Storyblocks, your collection, and how the experience has been.
Okay, well, hi everybody. My name is Sonya. I am a writer and filmmaker based out of Winnipeg, Canada. I'm originally from the Mississippi Cree Nation in northern Manitoba. And I was approached by Storyblocks to do a collection called that I called Indigenous Joy. And it was a really valuable experience to me just because I had been working in a nonprofit for a few months before I got the call from Storyblocks, and it was impossible to find Indigenous content, and the stuff I did find I would have to use over and over again. So I remember thinking to myself, I wish somebody would make more of these, and then the email popped up from Storyblocks, and so yeah, it felt very serendipitous. So I was really excited to take part in it, and it was the first time I got to go out filming since COVID began, so I had a great time shooting the stuff and getting to develop it. And so I've had nothing but good things to say about Storyblocks.
Awesome. Hey, Josue, how's it going?
Good. Finally was able to figure it out.
Oh, perfect. No problem. We were just getting started with introductions. Carol, do you want to tell us a bit about your involvement with Storyblocks here and how you've collaborated with us and co-created some content?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Carol Murphy, currently living in Southern California and creating in Southern California, living on my territory, Luiseño territory, right outside of my reservation. And yeah, it was great working with Storyblocks. My name got passed down from my friend Shannon, who was a huge contributor for the LGBTQIA Restock initiative. And just having her trust in me to do this project and create this collection, and having Storyblocks trust in me to just authentically show what I'm actually into, which is food sovereignty right now through tribal nations and also just through communities in Southern California in general, specifically Food Shed, who I'm working and doing content creation for. It was just great to tell those stories and just show their authentic work, and also get my family involved on my reservation where I grew up. That was really beautiful. And yeah, just a great project to be on, and feels like a little family here for sure.
Yeah, no, we're so glad you've been a part of it. And Josue, so your involvement in the Restock initiative and working with Storyblocks has been unique and extremely valuable. Do you want to talk a bit about how we worked together and how your role was a little different as a really unifying force between all the different creatives and cinematographers we worked for here at Storyblocks?
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, relatives. My name is Josué Rivas, and I'm Mexica and Otomi from Mexico City and Guanajuato, Mexico. And yeah, this project was kind of a, for a minute I've been seeing a lot of stock companies just kind of like not represent indigenous folks properly in a lot of their collections. So when this was brought up to me, I think that it was a perfect timing for kind of like where my mind was at, and it was really good to be able to support not only the campaign on the back end, but also like see these collections come to life. I think that was, to me, one of the biggest goals of this whole campaign was to see that collaboration and almost like having these healthy collaborations with the filmmakers. So yeah, really excited to be here today and can't wait to see what we're gonna get into.
Perfect, perfect. So we're here to talk to a number of different folks from what we like to call the Mass Creative class. We've got folks here that are, directors and cinematographers and businesses. And I'd like to take the time during this conversation to inspire some of the folks that work in businesses that may be interested in building stronger pathways for a more inclusive future. What are some of the things that you all would like to see businesses doing more of as it relates to inclusivity, particularly in the media world? If anyone would like to kick that off.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just to ensure that we're not there just as a figurehead. That's the biggest one. I've often been approached for projects where people have asked me to come on, but to not say anything or do anything, to just be a visible name that they can put on the contract. And so I think one of the biggest things businesses can do is really research what they would like from us, and then let us do that as well. Like, without being kind of nervous about, like, oh well, maybe this might be a little too radical for this type of situation. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that people can do, is just like, well, research the people that they would like to take part in this project, and then get out of their way, basically.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You've got to approach it from fearlessness and authenticity. We don't have all the answers on the business side, and brought a really incredible perspective to this project. Carol, Josue, anything else to share?
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off that, just real, true, genuine, authentic representation, more of it, and just continuing to do this, continuing to have these conversations. This is just a first step. So I think just keeping the ball rolling and really making sure that real, authentic stories are being told by the people being filmed is really important.
Yeah. Thank you both for that. That was really, yeah, I think to like kind of like extend that is, I think, working with Storyblocks and having, like you said, like not just being there as like a token, to be like really involved, and even like the radical steps that we took, even when it came to like language and the way that, we were talking about, like, how do we present this to the world? Do we want to continue to perpetuate like harmful language around photography of indigenous peoples, like shooting and taking and subject, right? So how do we do that? And I think that through that whole process, it was really interesting to see not only the openness that I think Storyblocks had, but also the fact that this is something that is going to become like industry standard, and really understanding that we weren't going as radical as we thought we were. We were just kind of like catching up to a lot of these things. So yeah, like being able to be involved in that was really important. So definitely backing on that idea that, it's a co-creation and a collaboration, instead of just like, let's highlight you for 1 month a year and call it Native American Heritage Month. Like, it was really beautiful to see that like this is just the beginning of hopefully more collections and then more involvement from the indigenous communities.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And effectively, as we're working with you all, along with all of our creators that are, integral in building a more inclusive, diverse, and, even exclusive content library that has content that's ultimately unique, only available, through Storyblocks, but also serves as a challenge to that larger media industry. would love to hear more. We've talked a lot about, this is just the first step. So, we are seeing businesses and creators taking the content that's been co-created through Restock and asking questions about how to best use it. What does success look like for you all as far as, seeing these collections being utilized from a business perspective and through creators and appearing throughout the media landscape? How would you like for them to be used, and what's the best way for folks to utilize them?
I mean, I can go. I can go on that. I think when we started this project, and it all started from me googling Native American one day and googling and seeing like that a lot of these harmful stereotypes that are like put at the very front of your search, whether you're on Google or whether you're like on Storyblocks or any other website, when you type it, there was like a fear to it where I was like, man, I really hope that is not another like harmful like stereotype of indigenous peoples. And then it was, right? So to really understand that these things are fixable, and that they're not, it's not like some like weird like idealistic world we want as indigenous peoples. It's almost like, no, if somebody says something, they'll do something about it, hopefully. And I think that was for me, when hopefully people look up like Native American or indigenous or even specific tribes from the filmmakers, that there is this level of connectivity, because now you're not only using like just any footage that was created without intention. Now you're using these very specific filmmakers collections that, in my opinion, just have a lot of heart and a lot of like relationship to it. Like they were made with the community, they were made with people's relatives, and hopefully that carries on onto these agencies and these like creators and filmmakers that want to use these collections, that it's not just another piece to take, but that you're like people should feel honored, right, to be able to use these collections in their films. They should feel honored that they be able to use something that was rooted in collaboration, that was rooted in us trying to shift the paradigm that like is kind of like overdue at this point, so yeah, I feel like that's kind of how I hope that folks feel, that they know that, yeah, that these are very special collections, that these filmmakers put like their whole energy into it, and hopefully they can make more, and eventually people will be using collections and stock that truly honors indigenous peoples.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to build off of that, Sonya in particular, I know we've talked a lot about the impact that seeing this particular work can have on current, future, and past generations. So if you had anything to say to the businesses that are ultimately utilizing this content, ensuring that they are approaching the work through a more inclusive lens, like how does that make members of your community or yourself feel?
I think it's really important because I remember when I was a kid, I was a powwow dancer. I was a jingle dress dancer, and the first time I saw a kid my age in a jingle dress on TV and something cool was in the Michael Jackson Black or White video, and even then I remember being a little bit annoyed because I was like, so I'm only valuable enough to be on TV if I'm wearing my regalia. And I always felt that was really odd because it didn't show me in a modern context or even in the future. Like I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, so I always wanted to see somebody like me or Carol or some like any of us in Star Trek, so it looked like we made it to the future. And so like going off on the last question, like success to me would be having portrayals of us in that future, like in that modern or like near future type setting, just because it's very easy to portray Native people as this historical, even extinct people, like Native people as a whole. And people don't realize that there's so many of us still around, multiple tribes, multiple people across even into South America, like across North and South America, even in other parts of the world, there are Indigenous people, and we're not just one monolith, and we're not dead, and we're still here, and we're just as valuable out of regalia as we are in our regalia. And so, yeah, like, and for me personally, like they're used when there's always the same picture that the Canadian press uses whenever they talk about a reserve, and it's this really dark picture of a little kid playing in a puddle that's overflown and a really bad house in the background. And I'm like, success for me would be if the Canadian press did a story about Canadian Indigenous kids, and they used one of the pictures that I took, or that Carol took, or like any of us took, and like just have that be the joy that is there, not just the sorrow. So that's something I hope can change.
Yeah, that's a wonderful vision, and as we're working on creating this particular content, we're inspiring businesses and creators to make that more of a reality. And in the instance of food sovereignty and the food supply chain, there is a particular content area, Carol, that you focused on. And how do you think the footage that you documented through working on this collection really showed the reality of food systems, and how could businesses really use that in a way that tells a realistic story of what that process looks like?
Yeah, well, food sovereignty in general isn't really a conversation that we're having too often right now. So I think it's going to be awesome to have that footage being used and seen, just showing the hard work that these hands have to go through to produce the food that's on our shelves in the grocery stores. Food sovereignty to Indigenous folks, I think is really important, because we have a chance to take control of what we're putting into our bodies, which is normally controlled by the outside. And it has a lot to do with just the nutrition of our people, and just getting these conversations rolling, about Indigenous folks growing their own food and being sovereign with that is just really important to me in general. But yeah, overall, I kind of wanted to piggyback off a couple of those answers, and just the importance of
Sure.
just diversifying this media in general. I think it's really important to just hold respect. So the creators that are using this footage in general, whether it's mine or Sonya's or Josué's, it's always important, I think, to hold a level of respect. Maybe bring creators on that are Indigenous that can give their perspective on how to use it. There's some of this footage, depending on what it is and depending on what the project is that it's being used for. Some of it needs permission to be used. Some of the stories that they're trying to tell needs permission. And so yeah, just kind of always keeping that in the back of your mind. Just not being the main creator, not being the hero of the story that you're trying to tell, and making sure you're bringing on Indigenous creators, I think is really important.
Do you all have a message to allies in the industry space that want to ensure that they're approaching this work from an authentic light? Any recommendations or watch-outs just to ensure that they are respecting the space that they are dipping their toes into, that may be new for these businesses?
I think just making sure that they realize that there's a lot of power in their own voices, and so making sure that they open themselves up to to allow to use their power to make room for us to be there too. Like a lot of people think that as allies they have to do these huge gestures of goodwill, but like just speaking up for other people is really, really awesome, or calling out when people aren't being the best types of allies, that sort of thing. Just like taking the fight away from us. So, because we often, like as creatives, we often have to fight for our own spaces at the table, and so having a true ally fight for those spaces so we don't have to is something that I really would find valuable in like business interactions and creativeness in general.
Absolutely.
You want to go for it, Carol?
I'd prefer you did first.
Yeah. yeah, I mean, I think that to me, it feels kind of like building a larger bridge, right? So I think that, especially in the creative industries, not seeing the relationship with indigenous communities as, you know, one that you check in on once a year, or, you know, one that you know, pay attention to when there's a tragedy that happens to those communities. You know, right now we're seeing that happening in Canada, right, to a certain degree, um, with the residential school systems, where I think when that happens here in the United States, people are gonna start like brands and like creatives, and then you see an overall society is gonna start being like, oh my God, we're like, you know, so bad. The foundation of this country is so bad, and then they'll start taking action, and then it'll be more for them than for that actual community. I think that this larger bridge, one that it's like a long-term relationship with indigenous peoples, and especially in the creative industry, one that can not only have representation, but, you know, like who is the CEO of a company, you know, who is the executive team of a company. I think that that's really important, because if you don't have the structure to be inclusive, and also, to be completely honest, having indigenous peoples in creative spaces makes everything better, because it, there is a level of respect that I think a lot of people that come from indigenous communities carry with themselves, you know, even to a very basic level. And sometimes, unfortunately, in our society, we don't, you know, in American culture, they don't really teach you that, you know. It's about taking, and about shooting, and about capturing. So I think that my message will be that, is that this larger bridge needs to be built like ASAP. And then when the tragedy happens, which I hope it doesn't, but it probably will, then we have established relationship and understanding of how to show up, not because we're like virtual signaling something, but because we truly want to heal and reconcile, which is like a really weird word to say out loud right now. But, you know, reconciliation comes at the end of the bridge being built.
And you know, these partnerships don't happen overnight. They're built over time. They're built through intention. We always say at Storyblocks, you know, it's important to you know, clean up our house, you know, inside before we're expressing ourselves on the outside. So making sure that your organization ultimately embodies the values that you are you know, selling through and sharing with your external audiences. Excellent.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to those answers. I think I would just really like to piggyback off of creating true and genuine connection and relationship. Yeah, holding respect throughout. And yeah, I guess my answers feel pretty simple to all of this, but I think it can be pretty simple. It's just the same way we go about creating relationship with anybody else. But continuing it, just making sure that it doesn't stop, making sure that this clock doesn't stop ticking.
And you know, as it relates to relationship building, I'd love to be able to provide our viewers with a bit of a lens into, you know, the importance of storytelling in Indigenous communities, and you know, how has storytelling played a role in your life, and had an impact on you? If you want to, you know, speak to the impact from like a future generation perspective, or you as a child, or even like growing up and learning from elders? Like, how has it been a presence in your life?
You want to go first, Sonya?
Well, I guess I can. So I was just trying to think in terms of like, well, how can I answer this without sounding like a nerd? Well, storytelling has always been a huge part of my family's life, part of my own. My parents, my mom was a huge fan of films. My dad was like this person who believed that our lives were a film, and so like I've always been like entrenched in that type of culture, and so stories and dreams in general have been a huge part of Cree culture, and so storytelling to me has always been as essential as breathing. Like, it's what I do for a career now, which blows my mind. And I never thought I would be able to do that. Like, as a little kid, I was always like, when my dad asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I was like, Dad, I want to be either a writer, I want to be a writer, a pro wrestler, or a marine biologist. And each of those three were just as likely as the other, because we'd never known anybody who graduated from university. And so it feels really good to continue this cultural activity that has connected my own people for so long into new and modern into new and futuristic ways. So I feel kind of like a future Indian type thing, if I may say. Indian as spelled NDN. So like, that's one of my favorite things. And so I'm just really glad to be able to keep sharing stories in the way that my ancestors probably wanted me to.
It's beautiful. You want to go for it, or you want me to go for it again? All
Yeah,
right.
I think just in general, storytelling is just it's just always been a great way of feeling seen and feeling heard. So I think it's just important for our future generations to continue making sure they feel seen, they feel heard, they have a sense of identity, and they're empowered to create themselves if that's something that they want to do. And yeah, pretty much empowered to feel like they can do anything because they can. And so, yeah, I think storytelling is important for all of that.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me, and for a lot of our, my community too, I think that storytelling has been something that it's seen as a tool, and I think that as we, as we continue to like deprogram ourselves and almost re-envision what a new normal could look like in our lives as a society as a whole, especially here in the United States and Canada, we need to go back to those basic teachings of, one, listening to community, listening to our elders, listening to people, our peers, that are like maybe sharing some very, very important knowledge and that can help the collective. And also like remembering that we get to like write this script, that we don't have to be subjected anymore to some form of reality that doesn't really work with the spirit. It doesn't really work with who we are as people. That we have these tools now that we can get on there and make a film as much as anybody else. That we can get out there and write a script as much as anybody else, and that it can be done with style, with humor, with love, and with that indigenous, like, yeah, that indigenous way of making things indigenously. It's and I think that's, yeah, when it comes to storytelling, that is very much how I see it. It's that it's not what we make, it's how we make it, and it's not the output but the process.
Yeah, no, those are excellent words, and we have the capability as a collective of creators to ensure that those stories are continuing to be told and elevated. Any parting words for the future generation of storytellers that have a desire to create and ultimately may either be if they're stuck or they may not have whether it's the resources or the time. How do we get them to be proponents of storytelling in the future, working with some of these businesses like Storyblocks to co-create?
I think the big one, well, I keep starting with I think, but yeah, I know from one of my favorite bands who I always mention when I do interviews like this. I'm a huge fan of U2, and one of their lyrics is about dreaming big and dreaming out loud. And that's how I feel that's the advice I give a lot of people who are coming up behind me. Like that idea that you should be able to walk before you can run. I never believe that. I believe you should always try to go as big as you can, because like you're always gonna like miss the mark, but whether you miss the mark ahead of the goal or behind it, like you're always going to learn something from it, and every opportunity is a way to learn. And so like even if it isn't like your dream job, like you should still go for it and learn a lot of things, because I never thought I'd be working in like in stock footage, but then I noticed that there was such a need for it in the same way that there was in the creative work I did. And so I was really proud to be a part of that and changing something that a lot of people use. And hopefully like if there's like a Coke Zero commercial, I'll see the footage I shot of my sister in it or something. So I'm just hoping for that. And so yeah, I'm just for people coming up, I think there's always a way. You just gotta like dig deep to find it. And so yeah, because I didn't think I'd ever be doing what I'm doing now, being a res girl, and now I'm doing such cool things just because I kept like hustling and moving forward and never really took no for an answer, but yeah, in a positive way.
Excellent words.
Yeah, just keep going. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody maybe that you look up to, or I would say Indigenous or not, reach out as much as you can, get the answers that you need to just build your own platform, and just know that you can do it. You can do it for sure. Everybody starts somewhere, and I think it's really important to feel your power just right now and always in the creative world. It's all doable. There's so many resources, from watching YouTube videos to, like I said, reaching out to creators that inspire you, asking questions. I know these creators they're always down to answer questions because they know that they started where you're at. And yeah, keep the wheels turning for sure. Just feel your power.
Thank you, Carol. All right, Josue, take us home.
I'll keep it simple. So I think that, and I keep thinking about this, you know, in this time of like a digital, you know, metaverse, you know, to a certain degree, right? Like we're like kind of like, you know, technological realities that probably our ancestors never saw for us, you know, and if they did, my hope was that their dream, right? Like those people that were here 7 generations before us, those ancestors, they dreamed about a world where we, this generation, could be not only adapting, but could be at the forefront of this technological reality that is about to come, you know, and that we're already in. Really, I mean, we're talking on a cell phone right now. To me, it really trips me out, because I think that our responsibility as people right now and as storytellers is to ambition and almost like plant seeds for those 7 generations ahead of us. That what do we want that to look like? What do we envision that to look like? What are our hopes, and how is our action gonna look like right now? So I think for me, that will be my message with that for those future generations, is to know that we're gonna do the work, and that we're gonna not only heal ourselves, but hopefully set the tone for the healing that could happen after us, and really like transform the intergenerational wounds that we carry into beauty and joy.
Excellent. Well, you know, media and storytelling has this distinctive power to ultimately, you know, transform lives and transform the narratives of, you know, our future generations, and, you know, stories we have to tell, and messages we want to be, you know, distributed to, you know, to the universe here. So we thank you all for being such excellent partners, and, you know, really creating a cutting edge experience for our customers, for inspiring businesses and creators that, you know, have a desire to build a more inclusive future for their content, for their customers. So thank you again for participating. For everyone on the live, please make sure to follow the journeys of all these excellent creators, and, you know, follow us. We're going to keep it going and ultimately continue building this more inclusive library of the future to inspire future generations and the businesses of the mass creative class. So thank you all again. And it was awesome speaking with you all. And we'll chat again soon. Bye, everyone.